Hello and welcome to another edition of Y-PAC's Check-ins. I'm here with my boss, Randy Beehler, the Communications and Public Affairs Director. Thank you for joining me again, Randy.
Thanks, Sean.
Now, today there's been some changes in loosening up of some of the restrictions. The governor has made a couple announcements. Can you talk about the four-phase plan that he has introduced to the people of Washington?
Yeah, I guess I can talk about it cursorily. We won't go into great detail, but the four-phase plan does allow for the reopening of businesses on not necessarily a hard and fast schedule, but it's a schedule that is primarily driven by data, by information that we're receiving about the continued spread of COVID-19. The first phase is underway now. That's the return of some activities like golf, fishing, hunting, but also those activities are still restricted in a lot of ways. For example, golfing, this isn't just free, open, and let's go golf like we used to. This is people maintaining distance, one person in a cart. You know, I was actually joking with someone earlier a few weeks ago about golfing, I think, as a kind of an inherently social distancing activity, because I'm way over here and you're way over here. Yeah, we do see each other on the green, but you're still way over there, and at least that's how I play golf. Anyway, or not well. But people will not be allowed, you know, more than one person in a cart will not be allowed. Groups of over two, if they all need to be from the same household. There's no gathering afterwards at the bar or the restaurant, at the clubhouse, at golf courses that have those. We talked last week about Fisher Park reopening. Fisher is open, operating. We are still having a little bit of a challenge. I mean, it's only been 2 days since Fisher reopened, a couple of days anyway, and we're still having some issues with people not knowing that they need to prepay. They can't pay at the course. They need to pay by phone or online. That's true at private golf courses and public golf courses as well. Privately owned golf courses, I guess is what I mean. So yes, there are some activities that are now being allowed, but with restrictions. And that's going to be the case as we move through the remaining 3 phases of that plan. There will be, if you take a look at the plan, you'll see some categories of businesses that will open in each phase. There are discussions underway right now by industries that are placed in one of those phases about reopening sooner, maybe with greater restrictions. There's a lot of input that's being provided to the governor's office by business leaders, business organizations, local officials, et cetera, about setting parameters that might allow businesses to open in an earlier element of the 4-phase plan. But we still got to see that. And again, as I emphasized at the beginning, and as the governor emphasizes repeatedly, this process of reopening is going to be driven by data, not by dates. And as we're well familiar, I hope most people in Yakima County are well familiar, our infection rate continues to be quite high.
Right.
Quite high. And part of that is due to testing, and we've got a good testing program going on in Yakima County, so we're identifying more cases. But I don't think that people should be under the impression that we're on the downward trend in Yakima County, in fact, or even at a leveling off stage right now. We're still on the climb, and that's something that I hope that the community internalizes a bit more and continues to practice what we've been doing, because that has worked to a large degree. The problem could be much greater had we not done that. Continued, consistent adherence to the restrictions, even as we move through the 4 phases, is going to be critical for us to continue making progress.
And we've talked about in previous episodes just that it's really time to hunker down, and it's not an easy thing. I mean, it's been several weeks. I've been working remotely for several weeks, and I've got students in the house. We've got college students and a junior high student, and it's not easy. It's not easy for the young people. It's not easy for adults. It's not easy. Just everyday life has definitely changed. So we need to hunker down and understand that it's still a serious situation out there.
it's very serious. It's as serious now, if not as serious as when this began. Particularly here in Yakima County, we are starting to see trends of some downward trends in infection rates other places. I just saw a map earlier today that showed how many states are in a downward trend, how many are in a steady trend, and how many are still in an upward trend. And the number of states that are still in an upward trend is concerning, and it requires continued diligence, and as you say, hunkering down and continuing to follow the practices that we're following. The understanding certainly is there from government officials with regard to business and the effect that the closures and the restrictions are having on business, and yet still, these actions are determined by data, by health data, by public health data. And for the time being, we're still under the restrictions imposed by the governor's office, and the city will continue to follow those.
And the city council actually has extended the city's stay-at-home order also. Can you talk about that?
Well, actually, that's an interesting point that you bring up, because what you're talking about is the city's emergency declaration.
Right.
Declaration of emergency. The orders to remain at home do not come from the city.
Right.
That is coming solely from the governor's office. The city does not even have, well, I suppose we could under a truly significant and unique to our region, just our area, could order something like staying at home.
Yeah.
That is not part of the emergency declaration of the city. Primary purposes of the declaration are to make the city potentially eligible for reimbursement of costs associated with responding to the emergency from the state government and the federal government, and also to allow the city during this time to sidestep or to not have to follow certain requirements for purchases. We're able to make emergency purchases without having to go through a normal bidding process. That is a super mundane, concept, I think, for the average person to even give thought to. But that's the primary reasons why the emergency declaration is in place by the city, not as a stay-at-home order.
And it's been extended. The declaration has been extended through June 4th.
June 4th, and the specific impact that has on the city is that city facilities that have been closed to public access for many weeks will remain closed until at least June 4th. And the way that the city has been conducting business for the last several weeks will continue. By that I mean online. We encourage people to conduct business with the city online. Permit applications, utility payments, dog licenses, those kinds of things all can be done online, and we strongly encourage people to use those available methods.
Right. Now let's talk. So June 4th is an optimistic. It could be a very optimistic thing if we continue to do what we're doing. It could be longer even for our area if the rest of the state were to
Yes.
be let off the hook, ease up a little more. If Yakima keeps climbing, then we would technically stay under an order from the Yakima Health District, correct?
Yes, that is true. An emergency declaration from the health district would likely remain in effect for our area. That has been something that's been made pretty clear, I think, I hope, by government officials, that this is unlikely to be a blanket standard reopening across regions, meaning regions within states, but even regions of states. It isn't a uniform one-size-fits-all reopening. It may have to be, probably will have to be modified and revised based on local conditions.
And it's a partial, as the governor described, a few weeks ago. It's a turning of a dial. It's slow. So this is partial reopening, and we talked about it earlier. Golf is open, but you don't go into the clubhouse. You're not renting clubs. You're not renting golf carts. It's very restricted still. So,
and that's very likely to be from, I guess I'm trying to share as much professional information as I can on these check-ins, but also from a personal standpoint and a professional standpoint, I think those kinds of restrictions are going to be in place for quite a while.
Right.
Even as businesses begin to reopen. For example, some of the phases include the reopening of restaurants and barbershops and hair salons, those kinds of things, but still with significant restrictions. Capacity limits, 50%, 75%,
Right.
those kinds of things. And it affects the city as well, because we're talking about, last week, you and I were talking about recreation programs, pools and recreation programs in the parks during the summer. We're still not clear as to whether we're going to be able to move forward with that. But even if we were able to, in the instance of pools, we would open a pool potentially with 50% capacity, maybe even less.
Right.
So we're still very much in the wait and see, gather data stage of this.
Now, let's turn the page a little bit and talk about the construction going on down at the convention center. There's some positive things, but that industry is also potentially affected also. So the construction does continue down there, but they could be affected in the long term for a significant amount of time still, correct?
No question. The travel and tourism industry is easily one of the most, at least uniformly across the board, industries that's been impacted considerably by COVID-19. It just stands to reason. People are restricted from movement, and the convention center relies a lot on business coming from outside. Convention goers coming here to the city of Yakima. However, the market that was there prior to the COVID-19 for the convention center was giving a clear indication that the convention center needed to have additional capacity to remain competitive. The addition of the 18,000 or so square feet will place the convention center in a position to be competitive for years to come. So this isn't something that is necessarily, we're going to see an immediate reaction and an immediate benefit, because it's going to take a while for that travel and tourism industry, I think, to rebound and recover. But when it does, the convention center will be well situated to take advantage of it.
Exactly, and that's what this expansion is for, is to
Yes,
provide for the future.
absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about an airport grant, a specific airport grant that was given the CARES Act. Can you talk about some of the funding that has been provided to the airport from the CARES Act and some of the other funding?
Well, and just for a little bit of context, it may not be a forefront on people's minds, but local government in general, but specifically local government, is gearing up, preparing for potential significant downturns in revenues. The city of Yakima currently, right now, our financial situation is such that we're able to provide the crucial public services that we provide: police, fire, park, streets. Those are our general fund categories, which are supported by taxes. Those funds, we anticipate, will see a downturn in revenue, and we're preparing for that. We're studying all sorts of possible scenarios, from least impactful to most impactful, and preparing for that potential. But we also are aggressively pursuing funding sources that are out there now, particularly from the federal government and the state government. In the case of the airport was awarded under the CARES Act. That's the first stimulus package that Congress authorized. The airport has received some money that will help offset some of the losses in revenue, which are going to be significant. A fair amount of the revenue that the airport receives is from what are called landing fees. Well, the service at the airport, the commercial service, has been cut back significantly from Alaska Airlines. We have one flight per day now, and it actually is kind of a jump flight from here to Wenatchee to Seattle, and then back again. So the revenue loss to airports is going to be significant, including the Yakima Airport. But fortunately, about $6 million of that CARES Act money will be coming to the city of Yakima, to the airport, to replace that lost airport revenue. The airport is also, we just got word very recently that the airport has received a grant of over $1 million to help with a runway rehabilitation project. Our transit division has received some money that will help offset its loss in revenue. So, and those will help. Those will help. They won't completely plug what could be a hole, a budget hole, if the worst case and even maybe the moderate case scenarios will play out. So I guess the bottom line is that we're making every effort we can to find the available resources that are out there, but are very much aware and are watching our budget very closely.
Good information. Thank you for that. Now let's give some people some more where they can find this information. Let's point them to the information. I've got this. I'll put up the city website. We'll go to the front page here, and that has the online center, the online portal for City of
Right.
Yakima.
Right on the very front page of the City of Yakima's website, which is yakimawa.gov, www.yakimawa.gov. On that very front page, we have at the top a COVID-19 portal, to use Sean's term, and you simply click on that portal and it'll take you to information about COVID-19 from both the city's perspective and others. At the very top of the page, you see the mayor's message from a couple of weeks ago. And then there's more information on this page about how the city has responded, what restrictions are in place for the city. And then below, we have a lot of information about links that you can get additional information, including the health district. Actually, third down, if you look under that helpful links, you see Governor Inslee's phased-in approach for reopening the state. You can click on that, and now you get even more information about what is open, what is not open, what may be open under additional phases. So that's, I think, a pretty good page for just even the average person to take a look at and get a little bit of context about how this may work.
And if people are looking for information just for city operations, right? Let me get back to this. Oops, I gotta go here. To find virtual city hall is right here. They've got information on Fisher Golf Course, the Yakima Convention Center expansion, and city news. So if they're looking for city news from the city of Yakima, they can go to this page.
Absolutely, and that isn't something that's unique during this emergency. That's always there, and we encourage people to use that as a resource for sure.
Right. Okay. There's one more thing that I want to talk about. It is Nurses Week as we record this, and my wife is a nurse, so I want to send out a shout out to all the nurses and healthcare workers, and also all the frontline providers for the city, the irrigation workers, everybody, including you. You're still at City Hall providing the information for us. So I want to thank you and all of our first responders, police officers, firefighters, and everybody else that's out there enduring this pandemic.
Absolutely, it's important. I think that we continue to support those folks who are out there every single day. And as you mentioned, on the front lines, it's not certainly easy, particularly for those healthcare workers. It must be very challenging, and we deeply and sincerely thank them for their efforts.
Wonderful. Is there anything else we need to talk about? There's always a silver lining. We're all in this together. We'll get through this. That's my opinion anyway. So
I think so. You know, we've said a couple of different times on these check-ins that Yakima has a history. I don't think it's unique. I'm sorry, I do think it's unique to Yakima. I don't think it's that normal every place, but Yakima has, you know, caring and generous and resilient history. And I believe, as you do, that we'll come out the other side of this.
All right. Thank you for checking in with me, Randy, and we will talk to everybody again next week.
All right. See you later.
Thank you.